Ghana's kind of wishing it down. I never got a move for him. Say, food and I'm wishing it down.
For coming. Once again, we plan on starting at 12 o'clock, but something came up and then we are starting now. I beg your pardon to forgive us for not starting on time. We've called you here this afternoon for a very important engagement. That is going to be addressed by our boss, the Director of Communications for the ruling New Patriotic Party. But before we start, we are being joined by some important personalities in the party, and I will take the opportunity to introduce them. We have here our chairperson for Canada, Madame Mrs. Owusu Ansan. She's here to support the directorate for this press conference. Then we also have our able and hardworking Deputy National Youth Organizer, my very good brother Jihad, also here with us to support us. We have my colleague, and for that matter, the Dean of the National Communication Directorate, Dr. Asilu Kukuru, also here with us. Then finally, my name is Dr.Bawumia Asante. But the person who will be addressing us this afternoon is no other person than the intelligent, noble, indefatigable National Communication Director of the ruling party, my boss, Dr. Richard Mahama. At this point, I will cede the podium to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we're okay with the podium. And ladies and gentlemen, I believe you'll find that Dr. Bawumia and the NPP offers a far more potent set of policies to stabilize and grow the economy compared to the NDC's ideas. You will also learn that about the inherent deception of the NDC's 24-hour economy proposal. It is my hope, and we hope, that you will inform Ghanaians about these findings that you will make here today at this press conference to enable us all make an informed decision to vote on December 7th for Dr. Bawumia and the New Patriotic Party. Ladies and gentlemen, the NPP's 2024 manifesto offers bold solutions for jobs and business. Its ideas are forward-looking to stabilize and grow the economy. It is leveraging the digital revolution to make Ghana competitive. Given the opportunity, that is, if we vote massively for Dr. Bawumia, the NPP's bold solution would fully position Ghana to benefit from the fourth industrial revolution. Ladies and gentlemen, as you have reported on several occasions, the NDC's manifesto and the NDC's campaign has constituted merely an insult led by its flag bearer, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, and an outright refusal to debate on the economy to help Ghanaians make an informed decision. In other words, they are running away from a debate apparently because of how they know that their economic proposals do not pass muster. As things stands now, with the 24 days or so to election, Ghanaians are still confused about the NDC's plan to grow the economy. They propose a catchy phrase, 24-hour economy, but they cannot explain it. The NDC is running an empty slogan campaign. We will return to the 24-hour economy proposal that we believe is an empty rhetoric, a slogan that means nothing in terms of solution to the problems that confronts Ghana today, much later. But now let me just focus and talk to you about what proposals the New Patriotic Party put forward that Dr. Bawumia and his running mate have been canvassing around the country, and so far visited in excess of 250 constituencies or so to spread these ideas which we believe would help transform the economy. Dr. Bawumia and the NPP's bold solutions for the economy have been widely discussed and found by experts to be relevant, workable, and effective in sustaining the economic recovery and delivering a stable economy for Ghanaians in the immediate term. Dr. Bawumia's economic solutions focus on several key areas. One, sustaining and expanding Ghana's recovering economy, creating jobs, implementing comprehensive tax reforms, building Ghana into a world-class digital economy, reducing cost of living, and enhancing public infrastructure. These initiatives address the urgent challenges of economic growth and jobs for the Ghanaian youth. The details of Dr. Bawumia and the NPP's proposals are as follows. One, sustain and expand Ghana's rebounding economy. Ladies and gentlemen, the economy has rebounded strongly since we turned the corner in 2023. The average growth of the first quarters of 2024 stands at 5.8%. That is 4.8% for the first quarter and 6.9% for the second quarter. The IMF projects a 4% real GDP growth for 2024, but at this present rate, the economy is likely to expand beyond the projected 4% by the IMF. Ghana is on track, ladies and gentlemen, to outperform the IMF's 3.6% projection for the sub-Saharan region. Dr. Bawumia proposing the following, and I think I'll go and just list for you the specifics of the proposals under sustaining and expanding the economy. One, it is to accelerate the growth and expansion of the economy over the next 4 years. Under Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, we have increased the size of the economy by 20 billion since 2016. That is 2017, since 2017 when we came into office. From 56 billion, which we inherited, to 76 billion as we speak. Dr. Bawumia and the NPP's bold solution would likely double the size of Ghana's economy in the next 4 years. Two, the proposal by Dr. Bawumia and the NPP is to achieve and sustain average growth of 6% by expanding agriculture, mining, including establishing a minerals development bank, a one district, one factory initiative, emerging industries, building digital hubs and services, sports and tourism, and creative arts. So, as you would know, the first 3 years of our being in government, the first term of His Excellency Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, this economy grew on average 7%. And going forward, we are projecting that the policies that we are putting, given the recovery, we are projecting that we'll maintain an average of 6% GDP growth for the next 4 years. Enhance public-private partnership as a primary funding model for public infrastructure projects. The challenge with government infrastructure projects, and you will see that every time the budget is passed, there's a concern about what percentage of the revenue is allocated to capital expenditure, or CAPEX, as it's usually called. It's a big problem, and one of the reasons that infrastructure development moves at a slower pace than we would like it. Now, the proposal by His Excellency Dr. Bawumia is to integrate the private sector to try and fund infrastructure projects. So the ideas of ensuring accelerated infrastructure development can't be realized if government moves beyond its limited resources to embrace private sector in investing in public infrastructure. establish an independent fiscal responsibility council to oversee fiscal policy. And this, you know, the Fiscal Responsibility Act was introduced by the New Patriotic Party, and we had operated according to it up until the disruption that followed COVID-19, where the act was set aside. But otherwise, we had operated within the 5% budget deficit provision by the act. His Excellency Dr. Bawumia, if he becomes president, is proposing that he will establish an independent council to oversee the implementation of that policy. Amend the Fiscal Policy Responsibility Act to add a new fiscal rule. This is very important. Amend the Fiscal Responsibility Act to add a new fiscal rule requiring that expenditure in any year does not exceed 105% of the previous tax revenue. This is significant, ladies and gentlemen. The next proposal deals with the provision or the efforts to reform our tax regime. His Excellency Dr. Bawumia and the NPP plans to offer a one-time tax amnesty to all Ghanaians and corporate entities through, one, the tax amnesty from the payment of taxes from the previous years. Now, many companies suffer the liability of owing on their taxes, and this on their books affects their investment and reinvestment in their production. It affects employment. It affects a lot of things because they owe government and the pressure that comes with that. This policy will come in very handy starting 2025 January. All companies, all outstanding debts that are owed to the state in terms of taxes will be wiped clean, and everyone, this is not only to companies but to individuals, to you and I, for all of us to start on a clean slate going into 2025. This is likely to help drive a lot of job creation because these companies will likely reinvest these revenues or these tax revenues into productive ventures, and that will generate more jobs in our country for our youth. Waiving the interest and penalties for failure to file taxes in previous years will enable everyone to start their tax journey afresh, as I was just explaining to you, to wipe the slate clean for all taxpayers in Ghana. This is something very important, and as a matter of fiscal policy, it will create a lot of investment opportunity and expenditure within the private sector that will lead to employment and production. The manifesto also promised to introduce a flat tax rate or tax system in Ghana as it's found in Estonia. I think this we've talked about it quite a bit, but the idea is that the tax regime now is variable, oftentimes progressive, and it is subject to confusion and many more other complications that ordinarily you or I cannot calculate on our own. But the introduction of a flat rate would allow for us, all of us, to know if the tax rate is 10%, you know it is 10%. There is nothing more, nothing less to be added to it. And that will ensure that Ghanaians understand their tax obligations and liabilities to the states. Also, the proposal is to reform the value-added tax regime by merging all levies into a single line item levy and treating the merged levies as part of input and output VAT to eliminate the cascading effect in the current regime, which in essence just means that when the VAT rate is 17% or whatever percent, it cuts across, there is no progression or variability in terms of what applies to input and what applies to output. It will be a flat rate, and it will be easy to calculate, and it will be cheaper relatively for Ghanaians and businesses to pay. Reduce withholding tax for small-scale gold exports to 1% to discourage smuggling. And you've heard on some occasions that people say the actual gold produced in Ghana is more than what is registered as what is sold. This is as a function of smuggling, because people try to evade the tax, and so they are unable to sell their gold through the appropriate channels so that they are tracked and documented. Very important one here, abolish the betting tax. This is a big one, and His Excellency Dr. Bawumia says that as president, this tax will be abolished. Incentivize Ghanaian startups in selected strategic sectors with investment tax credit for the first of their operations. So any startup operation will be available or will qualify for tax incentives to be able to drive their new venture. We'll digitize all aspects of tax administration to reduce leakage and improve efficiency and ease the filing of tax. This is very important. The digitalization puts us all in control. We can do more remotely without necessarily having to be physically present at a government office or a public office. We implement the flat rate tax for all importers. This is also another important one. This will bring predictability and stability in the prices of imported goods. This is very, very important. There's a flat rate that will be implemented for all importers, all product importers into our country. Again, we'll harmonize charges to align with charges in competing regional ports, particularly Togo. We often hear that Togo has a free port and that items from our ports are higher, or duties at our ports are higher. The proposal is that first in 2025, when he becomes president, this will be harmonized to other regional ports to ensure that we are competitive and that business that may likely be moving away from our ports to Togo will come back, and then that will contribute to creating jobs and opportunities for our people. The idea is also, again, on this is to ensure that our taxes on duties at the ports are either lower or the same as comparable ports in the sub-region. This, in all, will broaden the tax base, leveraging digitalization to capture more eligible tax voters to reduce the pressure on the few. And I'm sure you all have heard some of this conversation that just a few people are paying tax, the vast majority in the informal sector don't. This idea will ensure that we broaden the tax base. This has been a conversation that is had repeatedly, but with the advent of digitalization, we'll be able to achieve that feat, and that will bring the tax burden on Ghanaians down considerably. The next idea proposed by His Excellency Dr. Bawumia and the NPP is to endeavor to build Ghana into a world-class digital economy. And I think that should be a welcoming news for all of us, especially the young people and Gen Zs who are in tune with the fourth industrial revolution. This policy will ensure that the government is working with educational institutions and leading Ghanaian and global tech firms to establish a national robotics, engineering, and AI lab for research and training of young Ghanaians. And this will be unprecedented in terms of equipping our young people with the requisite skills to be relevant in terms of skills and compete favorably in the coming economy, which is going to be predominantly digital, IT, internet-based, and largely not, interpersonal or personal as things stand today. It's going to be predominantly digital, and with this implementation, will likely equip our people to be competitive on the global stage. Providing venture funding and grant support for commercially viable tech projects by Ghanaian startups to drive innovation, foster high-tech entrepreneurship, create jobs, and support the growth of Ghanaian high-tech businesses. Providing live lab opportunities to Ghanaians tech startups and matchmaking programs by purposely connecting them to matured large tech firms working on government projects to help startups test their ideas in real-world environment and to accelerate their product development cycle. Now, the key thing here is that if you are supposed to be, or any young person in Ghana who has a good idea in IT, but is wondering how to operationalize that idea, this implementation will provide them an ecosystem where they can try that idea by working with companies who are doing real work for the government, particularly to test the validity and operationalize those ideas so they can take advantage of them. It is more or less provide you an opportunity to rehearse, to test your ideas in a real life situation. There can be nothing more beneficial than this. It gives us all the opportunity, and especially those in that tech space, the opportunity to cut the cost of making mistakes or cut the cost of initial investment, which could also be a function of, say, for example, lack of funds or just opportunity to get started. The government will work with the Bank of Ghana to sufficiently expand regulatory sandbox to admit more Ghanaian and regional fintech companies. This will position Ghana as a multi-regulatory, multi-jurisdictional sandbox for financial and management interoperability. This is key. Again, the idea here is to gear up, position Ghana for the fourth industrial revolution to be up to speed, and then also providing opportunity for work in the IT world for our young people. Establishing a fintech fund. This is big, ladies and gentlemen. Establishing a fintech fund with a seed capital of $100 million to attract additional private sector funding to support Ghanaian startups developing payments and financial services solutions, primarily focused on region-wide exportable solutions. This is big, ladies and gentlemen. Continue leading the African Union policy campaign to achieve cross-border mobile money interoperability, significantly enhancing the buying and selling of goods and services across Africa. This will instantly expose Ghanaian enterprises and young entrepreneurs to a market of 1.4 billion people. Now remember, there's this conversation about intra-Africa trade is negligent, that we don't trade amongst ourselves. Oftentimes, it boils down to payment platforms, how transactions are settled or concluded. And with this platform that the government will be pushing, and remember also that the headquarters of the Continental Free Trade Center is here, and so that gives us the opportunity to access the 1.4 billion African market. And that, for me, is a good news for the Ghanaian entrepreneur and business. Implementing digital residency for businesses and individuals in tech firms to register and operate from within Ghana. This also attracting and getting businesses within the tech space to set up in Ghana. Implementing a 5-year digital nomad visa and work permit to attract global tech talents to domicile and work in Ghana. Again, attracting talents and human capital to Ghana and creating jobs at the same time. Appointing a digital ambassador whose role will be to develop new external markets for Ghanaian digital talents and products and facilitate the export of same. Internet penetration will be increased, currently increasing over 90% in advanced economies. Internet, we will endeavor, I think Ghana currently, we have increased from 32%, which we inherited in 2016, to about 70% as we speak. The efforts of the government under His Excellency Dr. Bawumia will be to achieve 90 to 100% penetration. In other words, the efforts to achieve digitalization depends on the ability to make access to the internet universal for all Ghanaians, and that for me is a welcome news that we must all embrace and vote for the NPP to be able to realize this vision for our dear country. Implementing comprehensive data interoperability across government platforms to enhance transparency and streamline services. Now you have seen this being launched up and down, where we have the Citizens app, where what it is that once your data is captured, with all the platforms that we have created so far, once your data is captured in a national home ownership fund to increase or to invest more in building houses. We know that the housing deficit is huge. This policy would help close that gap. The current Minister for Works and Housing is doing very amazing work in that area. This will be intensified in His Excellency Dr. Bawumia's presidency to ensure that we close that deficit, the housing deficit that we suffer, and ensure that a lot of Ghanaians have access to housing, and that will help to bring the prices of rent down in Accra, Kumasi, in our big cities. Improving housing finance through an expansion of the mortgage market, as well as rent-to-own schemes. So literally, that's not very common in our country, but it's a good innovation that you can buy a house through renting it, and by paying your rent, you become the owner of the house over time. This will significantly improve the availability and affordability of housing. The government also promised to introduce 200 megawatts capacity of solar power and also incentivize users by buying or by transitioning to solar electricity to cut down the dependence on the national grid, which inevitably will bring the cost of power down. Continue to make accessing services easier, that is access to electricity service easier. Once you have a Ghana card, all public and private organizations will not be required to collect your data. Again, this is what we talked about earlier about data interoperability. Creating jobs, the big one. Under His Excellency Nana Addo Akufo-Addo's administration, notwithstanding the unexpected global crisis, we have created over 2.3 million jobs in the 8 years in office. This is more jobs created than any other government in the 8 years, than any other government in 8 years. But we need to create more jobs than we have done. And that is why His Excellency Dr. Bawumia is committed that if he becomes president, immediately he will create opportunity to train 1 million young people in digital skills. He will create jobs through private sector construction and infrastructure development, industrialization, and agribusiness. Create jobs through tax amnesty program, and I talked about that earlier. By offering the flat rate tax to businesses, we are able then to stimulate production by these companies, plowing back these monies that are supposed to pay to government into their businesses. That will require employing more people to engage in that new production that will be putting on stream. Create jobs for artisans, carpenters, masons, and welders, and build environment for professionals to maintain public infrastructure through a revived and resource public works department. Now the public works department is redundant, but we're going to revive that and ensure that we are leveraging it to ensure the maintenance of public infrastructure. That's one thing we all say, that maintenance culture is low, and with this, by reviving the public works department, we'll be able to get back to the days where public assets will be taken care of and maintained for long-term use. Create SME jobs with the introduction of SME Bank. That's a big one. Create jobs through the minerals industry and its value chain, aluminum, gold, lithium, manganese, salt, etc. You know, the integrated aluminium project that is being undertaken, that will ensure that from mining of the alumina all the way to processing it will be done in Ghana, as opposed to just shipping or exporting the raw product or material outside the country. So that's a big one, and if you look at the entire value chain, there will be thousands, if not millions, of jobs created as a result. employ more security personnel. In fact, the record will show that we have employed more security personnel, not only employ more across police, immigration, prisons, and the like. The record will show not only that we have employed more, but we have resourced them the most than any other government in this Fourth Republic. We'll create jobs through the National Cybersecurity Workforce Development Program. It's an exciting thing, again, for our young people who are largely the focus of those IT jobs that will be created. And we'll employ more teachers because the need will arise. We'll set quotas for the recruitment of people with disabilities in the public sector. Employ more lawyers. And one of the key things that I think in most of the legal literature when you read, in terms of people's access to justice and the rest is lack of access to lawyers. And government says that it will employ more lawyers to support the legal aid regime, at least 2 for a district. And for all of us here who have the capacity, and I know all of you have the capacity whilst you're working, you can engage in the study of law, because a day is coming where you will have abundant opportunity to practice if you have the requisite qualification. Create other jobs through tourism, creative arts, sports, and sports, jobs abroad program, youth in seafaring program, aviation and logistics, green energy industries including the EV that I just spoke to you about, electric vehicles. Support businesses to drive and accelerate job creation by, this is important, by cutting 3% of GDP from government expenditure, that's about 30 billion, and redirecting it towards private sector provision of public infrastructure and services. This is key. In fact, this will stimulate production. It would create a lot more jobs, because the private sector will create more jobs and in efficient and more dependable ways than, as all of us know, that government is not good at business, quite simply. That's a fact, and the private sector participation in His Excellency Dr. Bawumia will bring efficiency and increased productivity. We'll be implementing a shift in electricity tariff structure to a regime in which commercial rates are either equal to or lower than residential rates, never higher than it is now. So this is one of the things that I think drives cost of living. For example, the cost of production of companies would always naturally be factored into the cost we pay. So if the cost of electricity for companies is lower, I think that will translate into lower cost of living for us. Establishing an SME bank to meet the special financing needs of small and medium businesses which employ over 80% of Ghanaians. Again, with that reduced cost of capital, they will be in a position to invest more into their businesses, which means that there will be more jobs created as a result. Establishing FinTech Fund, I think I spoke about this earlier on, $100 million, that's about 1.6 billion to attract additional private sector funding to support Ghanaian startups in the IT space. Reforming the license regime for small-scale mining sector, and establish mineral development bank to finance viable local mineral projects, small miners, and as well as Ghanaians mining and offering services in that sector. This is one of the key things, because now you will see that most of the mining companies in Ghana are foreign, because it's a capital-intensive area, and if you provide, by establishing the Mineral Development Bank, we'll be able to offer access to capital to Ghanaians, to be able to set up in that area and be able to venture into mining and do so profitably, and make sure that the returns are kept here in Ghana, and in the process we are empowering our own people, our own brothers and sisters, to take advantage of the natural resources that we're endowed with as a country. So there are a lot more on these proposals that I can tell you, but I will encourage you to have a copy of our manifesto and read this into details and be in a position to share this with your viewers and your listeners to ensure that Ghanaians have the information that will form the basis of their vote on December 7th for His Excellency Dr. Bawumia and the NPP parliamentarians across the country. So, ladies and gentlemen, we should on this basis vote for Dr. Bawumia and the NPP, as I've just finished talking about. The economy is everything to vote for on December 7th. The economy is everything to vote for. And Dr. Bawumia and the NPP offer the right policy solutions to boost the growth of Ghana's economy and the prosperity of its people. Now let me turn briefly to the NDC and talk about what they offer on the economy.